Most of my videos have focused on home coffee roasting. Today we're going to introduce a series that deals with brewing coffee, how to brew coffee to accentuate all of the flavors, learning the basics of what happens when we brew coffee, and how we can improve the cup through this process. So stick around. All right, thank you for joining me today and welcome to the Virtual Coffee Lab. Again, this video series, this channel is all about home coffee roasting, brewing, grinding, drinking, tasting, everything that has to do with the whole home roasting and home brewing hobby. And so today we've got something special we're launching, and it is a series on brewing. And my son Michael is going to be spearheading that. He's going to be leading us through the whole process of brewing coffee and different methods, different ways, and really helping us understand some of the basic concepts of brewing so that we can have the best possible cup of coffee that we're trying to achieve. So let me introduce you to my son Michael.
Hello, my name is Michael, and I'm going to be kicking off a series on brewing, coffee brewing here on the channel. So if you're watching the channel right now, you're probably someone who roasts coffee at home, and you like to geek out about all the different variables that go into your coffee roasts. How long your dry phase is, your development time, all of that kind of stuff. But maybe it's been a while since you've geeked out on coffee brewing. And I just want to remind us and get us thinking about brewing for this video as it relates to someone who's trying to get better at coffee roasting. So why focus on brewing as someone who's interested in coffee roasting? So first of all, you probably know that our enjoyment of coffee is at the end of a very long chain of things that have to happen for the coffee to be good. So coffee starts out as a plant that's being grown, and then the seeds are processed in a variety of ways. They arrive into roasters' hands, and then they're roasted in various ways, short, long, dark, light, etc. And then coffee is brewed, and then we consume it. So brewing comes after roasting. That means that brewing is your window into the coffee, the way that it was grown, processed, and how it was roasted. So if you're someone who's trying to get better at coffee roasting, you need to have a reproducible and enjoyable way to brew your coffee to really get an idea of what's going on in your roast. So beyond just trying to brew consistently, you have to think about the different ways you might brew your coffee. You might use a French press, you might do pour over, and any of the different ways to brew coffee are okay, but knowing how they accentuate or modulate coffee flavor is important when you're trying to learn about a coffee and the way that it was roasted. Now, everyone has their favorite brew method. This might be a method that's really popular that you've adopted. It might be one that you've found and just used almost every day as your daily habit, but everyone has their preferred method. And I'm not here to try to convince anyone about exactly how you should be brewing your coffee with which device or anything like that. But I want us to try to think about what brewing is for a few minutes so that we can wrap our minds around how brewing modulates the flavor of coffee compared to roasting. So what is brewing? Brewing is when we take coffee beans that have been roasted and we try to extract the delicious compounds that are within that into a liquid to drink it. And there's all kinds of stuff that we can learn about those compounds and how they come out of coffee. But first, let's think about the different ways that people try to extract compounds from coffee into water. There's immersion, where you take coffee and you pour water in and you let it soak together, and then you filter it a bit and drink it. There's percolation, which is where you have a collection of coffee called a bed, and water passes down into the bed and out the bottom. There's also something called decoction, which is a pretty cool name, and that's where you combine water and coffee and you boil it. So there's those basic ways, different ways to brew coffee, And each one of them has a lot of different variations, and you can even combine them in different ways. So the first question is, why is it that a pour over tastes different than a French press? So it turns out that the different compounds in coffee that give us the good flavors, they come out of the coffee at different speeds. So we can think about the different compounds that you might find in coffee. There's probably some that taste sweet. There are some that taste fruity or tart or acidic. There's some that taste savory, and there's some that taste bitter. And everyone finds those different flavors in their coffee. But thankfully, the flavors that are usually preferable tend to come out of the coffee first, and the less preferable, more bitter flavors come out of the coffee later or more slowly. So when we brew coffee, we're trying to hit the optimal point where we've gotten all of the good stuff and none of the bad stuff. And once you know that, everything changes. Because at that point, you're trying to find the sweet spot among many overlapping circles. And I bet to some degree you're aware of this sweet spot in coffee brewing. You're aware of it because probably at least a few times you've missed the sweet spot. Maybe you've ended up with a cup that tasted really weak and a little sour. And that's probably because you didn't get all of the compounds out that you needed to. Or maybe another time you ground a little bit too fine and you were making a pour over and it just took forever for the water to get through the grounds. And when you tasted it, it was very harsh and bitter. And that's because you got a ton of tannins in there and you took too many of the compounds out of the beans. So how do we find the sweet spot is really the question. And that's what we're going to be talking about and thinking about. And the short answer is that all of the different things that we do when we make coffee, from the type of water we use, the water temperature, the particle size of the grounds, the type of burrs that were used to grind the coffee, the shape of the pour over device if you're doing percolation, the length of the steep time if you're doing immersion, all of that affects the way that the coffee tastes. And so it's on us to figure out how to find that sweet spot and how to reproduce that sweet spot, because really what we want is to be able to brew within the sweet spot so that we can then observe changes in our roasts. So all of this to say that the way you brew your coffee controls which parts of the coffee, the precious, glorious coffee compounds that you worked so hard to roast correctly, end up in your cup. So you might be thinking at this point that what I'm saying is pretty abstract or theoretical, and who knows, maybe it doesn't make much sense what I just said. But what I'm hoping to do in this video series is to do some videos about things that I've learned in brewing, things that I've found that improved my brewing. Also to share some knowledge that I've found with people that are much smarter than me, that have written books about this type of thing. And maybe even to do some comparisons with my dad and I of different variables in brewing and how they can affect taste. For example, checking out the difference between a conical burr set and a flat burr set is something that could be really interesting that we could do. I would also like to take a look at cone filter shape for percolation methods, and comparing how immersion methods taste in their flavor profile compared to things like pour overs. So we're going to be doing some comparisons. I'm going to be sharing some things that I've learned in my own brewing adventures and foibles, and hopefully I'll be able to learn from you too. So let me know down below in the comments what you've learned from brewing, what you struggle with, and what you would like to know, and we will kick this off and try to learn together about coffee brewing.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for explaining some of the basic concepts of brewing. That was really interesting, and I'm really excited to see the coming videos related to coffee brewing. You know, you guys, Michael and I have been in this coffee journey together, roasting and brewing. Michael has really excelled when it comes to brewing, and so he's got a lot of great information, and he'll present it in a way that's organized so that all of us will be able to follow along and understand, learn, and apply these things and improve our brewing. Because that's what it's all about. That's what we do here at the Virtual Coffee Lab. We take a look at roasting and brewing and grinding and drinking and all these different things. And we're hobbyists. So this is something that we're interested in, and we want to learn how to do it better. And so that's what we're conveying to you. That's what we're sharing with you. And speaking of sharing, I would really appreciate it if you guys would hit the like button right now, because that means YouTube will share this video with other home coffee roasters and coffee enthusiasts. And they'll find the videos and they will benefit from those as well. At least I hope they will. Also, subscribe to my channel. That really helps me out a lot. And if you really want to be notified, hit the bell icon. You'll be the first to know. You know, I heard some really similar concepts that Michael just shared towards the end about modulating the coffee flavor through the brewing process. And we just talked about that last week with the roasting process, when we go through that middle phase and we are dealing with times and temperatures and the progression of the roast and allowing all of those chemical reactions to take place. There's some differences with brewing, obviously, but some of the concepts sound the same. So I'm really looking forward to learning about that, and we have a great person that will help lead us through that. So Michael, awesome job, and looking forward to seeing that next week. So thank you guys for joining me today, for joining us today. And again, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And we will see you next week here at the Virtual Coffee Lab.